Hey guys, this is National Master Kevin Yang back at it with another video. So in this game, this is my second game against Runinja. So this is a Caro-Kann analysis. After e4, c6, d4, d5, e5, c5. So this is what is called the advanced defense of the Caro-Kann. And essentially, black sacrifices a pawn for much needed development. So I'll let you know what goes on. D takes c5, knight c6, knight f3, e6. Bishop is coming out to attack. Bishop e3, knight e7, c3. And you can see that I'm holding on to the two pawns, right? And note this is usually what happens in the games. But I'm pretty sure queen c7 is played here, and after a move like bishop b5, bishop d7, I don't remember the move. It could be queen e2, I don't know. But the essential main goal is that after a6, bishop takes, and let's say bishop takes c6, knight a3, like eventually after black develops and plays this f6 move, there will be compensation for this odd looking pawn. That's how it goes, but I honestly have little knowledge of this setup on the white side. So after knight takes d4, this is an inaccuracy. Why? Well, pretty simple. It gives me a reason to believe that this is a good pawn structure, right? Initially, this pawn had to be protected by this defending central bishop. Now, although sometimes a bishop is like a pawn, this looks much more pleasing than this looks, because you'd rather see a bishop here, or you'd rather see a bishop here, right? But here, it's just protecting these two guys. So right now that you remove my bishop and replace it with a very strong pawn, this gives me advantages. So I have to say that the move queen b3 is an inaccuracy on my part, because I sort of forgot that black can just go rook b8 and b6. So after rook b8, queen c2, I did not want b6 to appear just yet. So after bishop e7, I played g3. Now, why did I play g3? Because after bishop d3, I was worried about knight f4, right? Threatening the g2 pawn. Now, although that is worrisome, I have to say the reason I played g3 was because I value my bishop, right? I want it to be safe. I want it to survive, because this bishop is much better than that knight. So that's essentially the case. So after here, castles, I played h4. The reason why was I wanted h5, and I wanted to force black's knight into the back. So after rook e8, h5, knight f8, bishop d3, f6, and now I start this maneuvering process. I get the knight to f4, try to attack that weak pawn, and solidify my advantage. So after queen a5, queen d2, queen takes d2, and you can see that I still maintain this very strong structure in the center. And that's essentially what's going to get me the win here. So rook b1, notice that I will now trade everything down. Why? Because I'm a pawn up, number one. Number two, I have reason to believe that I can break through on this side, because this side is closed down. So I have reason to break through knight e2, knight c3, bishop d3, bishop b5. So let me just make those arrows again. That's what I'm going for, right? So after g5, en passant, if you didn't know, so let me just remind viewers of what en passant is. So think of it this way. The two villagers haven't made contact, right? But now let's say one guy, so let's say here you can choose to say hi to the pawn, but you can also choose to say, I'm going to bypass you, right? I'm going to take an alternative route. Now here in chess, you can force the villager to talk to you. So this is what I call a force of dialogue. So if you think of it this way, en passant is a force of dialogue. It says, you know what? Do I want to force the trade with you? Or do you just play pawn up and you beg for it, right? So what white did basically was force the trade. And after pawn takes, I prove my idea, rerouting. I solidify this pawn structure before doing anything because I notice that, okay, so first of all, black can play g5, but I won't do anything because my pawn structure is so great, right? So what I'm going to do is bishop d3, bishop b5, and use my knight to come on in. So after a4, right, what I want to do is I want to avoid a4 and bishop a5 because I want to preserve my knight here. So that's one thing, that's one goal for me. So I play a4, and after g5 I play bishop d3, and in fact, taking is probably better here because after bishop h4, I'm going to play bishop b5, and I'll have king e3. I mean, it won't make much of a difference, but at least this bishop is going to have some play on the king side. So with g4, that really shuts the bishop's diagonal down. So after bishop b5, this is a good trade for me because it allows me to break through with my pawns, right? I can start pushing, and this knight is going to guard this pawn, and so is the king. So after king f7, b6, knight b5, and here I resigned. And you might think, wow, why? Why did I resign? Well, I mean, it was a personal note, but I had to go. So, yeah, I resigned with courtesy, but also letting our Runinja opponent know that I needed to go. So essentially, my plan was knight a7 and bring the king over. That was my plan. So king d7, knight a7, king e8, king c3, and you can say like, what if you try bishop h4, right? Oh, but then there is b7 and a queen. Or, bam, g3, b7, check, and come down here. Right, so let's say king f7, here, g2, and there is no more. So, essentially, I was winning in this part of the game. I just resigned with courtesy. So, how did I win here? Knight takes d4 really helped me out, I have to say that. And after that, queen b3 was an inaccuracy on my part. I should have just played, could have played h4 here, could have played g3 like I did in the game. So essentially, queen b3 and queen c2, I could have just also played queen c2. And after this, I felt like, despite all of that, I played a relatively decent game, knowing that, it was a closed position, and I eventually got this bishop to trade. So what if the bishop didn't trade, right? Bishop b7, what would I have done? Bishop d7, just lock down that pawn chain, king f7, knight b5, king e7, and now c6, bishop a6, what do? Knight d6. What does this do, you might say? Now what if bishop c7? Knight e8. And after bishop b6, what do? King e3, I protect the pawn. And after something like king f7, I'm going to play c7, right? But after, let's say, bishop c4, now I have knight g7, and I'm going to break down that wall. So I'm really lucky to see that this bishop targets all the pawns on this diagonal, and really, that's how I won the closed position. This is why I show that knights are much better in closed positions than they actually look, right? So they have an outpost here. They can come around and attack each of these. They have a lot of potential in closed positions. These bishops, they're defensive, they're guarding, they're not great. But in an open position, if they had access to this diagonal, they would be much better bishops. So that's going to conclude my video for today. Thank you for listening, and I really hope you learned something, because other than that, have fun. And if you don't have fun, you're not going to improve at the game. So have fun and be curious. Thank you.